The asterisk harvester of worlds asterisk moved through the dark between stars. It was a massive ship, larger than any city, its hull dark and smooth, built for a single purpose. To take. For 2,000 cycles, it had traveled the galaxy, finding worlds rich with resources and stripping them clean. The Xylos Empire did not conquer. They did not enslave. They harvested. They found primitive worlds, took what they needed, and moved on. Commander Vex stood on the bridge, watching the stars drift past. They had led 100 harvest operations. 100 worlds. 100 primitive species that had looked up at the asterisk harvester asterisk and known fear. It was always the same. The scans showed primitive technology. The species panicked. Some tried to fight. Most simply waited. None of them mattered. The Xylos were too advanced. Too far beyond anything these worlds could offer. The solar system appeared on the screens. A small yellow star. 8 planets. The third one was the target. Scans showed water, atmosphere, life, and more. The scans showed intelligence. Vex studied the data as it came in. The species called themselves humans. Their technology was primitive. They used chemical propulsion, nuclear fission. They had barely left their own moon. They were divided into hundreds of separate nations that spent much of their history fighting each other. Standard procedure would apply. The harvest would take 3 cycles. Then the asterisk harvester asterisk would move on. But something caught Vex's attention. The scans showed structures. Millions of them. The humans had built over every corner of their world. Cities that spread across continents. Roads that wrapped around the planet. Lights that turned night into day. The population was enormous, far larger than any species the Xylos had encountered. And the electromagnetic radiation coming from the planet was overwhelming. Thousands of signals. Millions of voices. All of them talking. Broadcasting. Screaming into the void. Vex frowned. This was new. In 2,000 harvests, they had never seen a world so loud. The Xylos preferred quiet worlds. Worlds where the primitive species lived in small groups, their minds focused on survival, not on filling the air with noise. This world was different. This world was screaming. Vex pushed the unease aside. The humans were primitive. They had no space fleet. No energy weapons. No shields. Their cities were made of steel and glass. Their weapons fired metal projectiles. They were not a threat. They had never been a threat. No primitive world had ever stopped the harvest. Not once. Begin descent, Vex ordered. The asterisk harvester of worlds asterisk moved toward the blue planet. Its shadow fell across the surface, darkening a continent. Below, the humans would be seeing it now. A massive ship, larger than anything they had ever built, hanging in their sky. They would be afraid. They always were. Vex waited for the signs. The panicked broadcasts. The desperate attempts to communicate. The chaos that always came when primitive species realized they were not alone in the universe. But the signs did not come. The humans were still broadcasting. Their signals continued as before. News. Music. Voices. They were talking about the ship, yes. Vex could see that. But there was something different in their voices. Something Vex had not heard before. They were not panicking. They were planning. Vex looked at the data again. Military channels were active. Ground forces were moving. But they were not fleeing. They were moving toward the asterisk harvester star. Taking positions. Waiting. They are mobilizing, an officer reported. But they are not attacking. They are forming a perimeter around our descent zone. Vex stared at the display. This was not the pattern. Primitive species did not form perimeters. They ran. They hid. They begged. They did not surround the asterisk harvester asterisk and wait. They are not afraid, Vex said quietly. The words came out before they could stop them. The officer looked at Vex. Commander. Vex did not answer. They were looking at the scans again. The electromagnetic radiation. The signals. The voices. The humans were not quiet. They were not simple. They were not like the other primitive species the Xylos had harvested. They were something else. But what? Vex pushed the thought away again. 2,000 harvests. Not one failure. The humans were primitive. They had nothing that could stop the asterisk harvester star. Nothing that could even slow it down. Continue descent, Vex said. Prepare the drones for deployment. We begin the harvest in 1 cycle. The bridge crew returned to their work. The asterisk harvester asterisk moved lower, its shadow spreading across the land. Below, the humans watched. They did not run. They did not hide. They waited. Vex looked at the blue planet filling the view screen and felt something they had not felt in a very long time. It was small, quiet, easy to ignore. But it was there. Unease. The asterisk harvester of worlds asterisk broke through the clouds. The descent was smooth, the ship moving with a grace that seemed impossible for something so large. Its hull was dark and reflective, catching the light of the sun and throwing it back in strange patterns. It hung in the sky over a populated area, casting a shadow that stretched for miles. Cities went dark beneath it. Towns were swallowed by its shape. Commander Vex stood at the viewport and looked down at the world below. It was green and blue, covered in life. The humans had built their cities along the coasts, their roads connecting everything like threads in a web. From up here, it looked peaceful, quiet. But Vex knew better. The sensors showed millions of beings down there, all of them moving, all of them watching. Prepare the broadcast, Vex ordered. Standard message. The communications officer nodded. The Xylos did not waste words. Their message was simple, clear. It would appear on every screen on the planet, every communication device, every display. The humans would see it. They would understand. The broadcast went out. People of this world, you are now under the temporary authority of the Xylos Empire. Your planet has been selected for resource harvesting. Remain in your homes. Do not interfere. You will not be harmed. The harvest will take 3 cycles. After that, we will leave. Any resistance will be met with force. The message ended. Vex waited. Nothing happened. The humans did not respond. Their broadcasts continued as before. News. Music. Voices. It was as if the Xylos were not there. As if a ship the size of a city had not just appeared in their sky. Vex frowned. This had never happened. In 2,000 harvests, primitive species always responded. Some with fear. Some with anger. Some with desperate attempts to communicate. But they always responded. They always reacted. The humans were doing neither. Scan their communications, Vex ordered. What are they saying? The sensor officer worked quickly. They are talking about us. But they are not panicking. They are discussing. Planning. Military channels are active. They are moving forces. Vex looked at the display. Human military units were mobilizing. Tanks. Aircraft. Ships. But they were not moving toward the asterisk harvester star. They were moving into positions around it, forming a ring. Waiting. They are surrounding us, Vex said quietly. With primitive weapons, an officer said. They cannot hurt us. Vex did not answer. They were looking at the display, at the ring of human forces forming below. The humans were not attacking. They were not running. They were waiting. Vex ordered a second broadcast. This time, the message was sharper. Harder. We repeat. Do not interfere with the harvest. Any hostile action will be met with overwhelming force. This is your final warning. The message ended. Vex waited. Still nothing. The humans did not respond. Their broadcasts continued. Their forces held their positions. They did not move. They did not attack. They just waited. Vex felt something they had not felt in a long time. Uncertainty. The humans were not acting like prey. Prey ran. Prey hid. Prey begged. The humans were doing none of those things. They were acting like something else. Something that watched. Something that waited. Something that had seen danger before and had learned to be patient. Below, in a command center buried beneath a mountain, General Marcus Cole stood in front of a wall of screens. Each screen showed a different view of the alien ship. The massive hull. The shadow it cast. The strange lights that moved along its surface. Around him, officers worked in silence. They had been awake for hours. They had families they had not called. Homes they might never see again. But they worked. They planned. They waited. Cole's face was calm. He had seen war before. He had seen enemies with better weapons, better technology, better everything. He had learned that technology did not win wars. People did. What are they doing? An officer asked. Cole looked at the screens. The alien ship hung in the sky, unmoving. It had sent 2 messages. It was waiting for a response. It would not get one. They are waiting for us to panic, Cole said. They want us to run. To hide. To make it easy for them. He looked at the officers around him. We are not going to do that. We are going to hold our positions. We are going to wait. We are going to let them make the first move. And when they do, we show them what happens to things that land on our world uninvited. The officers nodded. They returned to their work. The screens flickered with data. troop positions, supply lines, communication networks. The humans had been preparing for something like this for a long time. Not for aliens, maybe, but for invaders. For anyone who thought they could come to Earth and take what they wanted. On the Harvester Vex watched the humans and waited. The ship was ready. The drones were ready. The harvest could begin at any moment. But Vex did not give the order. Something held them back. Something about the silence below. About the ring of forces that did not move. About the way the humans waited. They were not prey. That much was clear now. But what were they? Vex looked at the blue planet below and realized they did not know. And for the first time in 100 harvests, that uncertainty felt like danger. The harvest began at dawn. Drones descended from the Harvester of Worlds in waves, hundreds of them, moving toward the surface like a swarm of metal insects. They were automated, efficient, designed for a single purpose. They would strip the planet of its resources, move on to the next area, and repeat. The Xylos had done this thousands of times. It was routine. Commander Vex watched the drones descend. The displays showed them spreading out across the continent, moving toward areas rich in minerals and metals. The humans had not responded to the broadcasts. They had not moved from their positions. They simply waited. Vex was tired of waiting. Begin extraction, Vex ordered. The drones reached the surface. They extended their harvesters and began to work. Then the humans attacked. It was not what Vex expected. There were no missiles. No soldiers. No explosions. The humans did something far simpler. They filled the air with noise. Every frequency, every channel, every band of communication became a storm of sound. Music. Static. Voices. Thousands of signals, all of them screaming at once. The drones, designed to operate in the quiet of primitive worlds, lost contact with the mothership. Their sensors went blind. Their navigation systems failed. They drifted. They crashed. One by one, the signals on Vex's display went dark. Vex stared at the screen. What are they doing? They are jamming our signals, an officer reported. They are flooding every frequency. The drones cannot function in this environment. Vex felt a cold weight settle in their chest. The humans were not fighting. They were blinding. They were deafening. The Xylos technology, so advanced, so superior, could not function in the chaos of human civilization. Send a second wave, Vex ordered. Shielded drones. Full spectrum protection. The second wave descended. The drones were shielded now, protected from the noise below. They reached the surface and began their work. The humans adapted. They used lasers to blind the drones' sensors. They used electromagnetic pulses to disable their systems. They used old-fashioned nets, cables launched from the ground, tangling the drones' propulsion systems. One drone was brought down by a fishing net. Another was caught in a cable strung between two buildings. The drones were designed to fight energy weapons and shields. They were not designed to fight a species that threw metal nets at them. Vex watched the losses mount. 20 drones. 50. 100. The harvest was failing. The humans were not just resisting. They were hunting. We cannot continue at this rate, an officer said. We have lost over a third of the drone swarm. Vex made a decision. Prepare a ground team. Warriors. We will send them down to assess the situation and neutralize the human resistance. The officer hesitated. Commander, we have never needed ground forces for a harvest. We have never faced a species like this, Vex said. The drop pods launched. They descended through the atmosphere, heat shields glowing, and landed in a forest outside a small town. The pods opened. Xylos warriors stepped out, their armor gleaming, their weapons ready. They were elite. They had trained for centuries. They had never faced a species that could challenge them. They found themselves in a world that did not want them. The trees were dense, their branches blocking the sky. The ground was uneven, covered in roots and fallen leaves. The air was thick with humidity and the sounds of creatures they did not recognize. And everywhere, there were signs of the humans. Paths worn into the earth. Structures built from wood and stone. Markers carved into trees. The warriors moved through the forest in formation. They did not see anyone, but they felt eyes on them. They heard movement in the trees. Branches snapping. Leaves rustling. Footsteps that stopped when they stopped. One warrior fell behind. They heard a sound behind them and turned. Nothing. They turned back. A human was standing in front of them. A woman. Old. Her face was lined with years. She wore simple clothes, a jacket and pants, nothing that looked like armor. She was holding a weapon that looked like it had been built 100 years ago. Wood and metal. Old. But her eyes were steady. They had seen things. They had survived. "You are not welcome here," she said. The warrior raised their weapon. The woman fired first. The warrior fell. In the command center beneath the mountain, General Marcus Cole watched the feed from the forest. The camera showed the woman standing over the fallen warrior, her weapon still raised. Around her, other figures emerged from the trees. Men and women, young and old, farmers, hunters, people who had lived in this forest their whole lives. Cole's face was hard. He had given the orders. He had known what would happen. "Send the message," he said. The message went out on all frequencies. A single word. Repeated. Clear. Unmistakable. Abort. 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 On the asterisk harvester of worlds asterisk, Vex heard the message. They saw the last signals from the ground team go dark. They looked at the display, at the blue planet below, at the swarm of drones that lay scattered across its surface, at the warriors who would not be coming back. Vex closed their eyes. For the first time in 2,000 harvests, they understood. The humans were not prey. They were not victims. They were something the Xylos had never encountered before. They were a species that would not be harvested. A species that would not be taken. A species that would fight, and blind, and trap, and kill, until the harvesters left or died trying. Vex opened their eyes. "Prepare to withdraw," they said. The words tasted strange. "Bitter." "Commander," an officer asked. "We are leaving," Vex said. "Send the transmission. Tell the Empire. We made a mistake. We made a huge mistake." The reports came in one after another. The ground team was gone. Their signals had gone dark within minutes of landing. The drones were destroyed, their wreckage scattered across forests and fields and city streets. The harvest was a failure. 2,000 worlds harvested without incident. And now, one primitive planet had stopped them cold. Commander Vex stood on the bridge of the asterisk harvester of worlds asterisk and stared at the display. The blue planet filled the screen, beautiful and calm. Below, the humans waited. They had not celebrated. They had not sent messages of victory. They simply waited. "Order the retreat," Vex said. Their voice was quiet. "Take us out of the atmosphere." The ship began to rise. The engines hummed, pushing the massive vessel away from the planet below. Vex watched the surface fall away, the cities shrinking, the oceans becoming blue smudges. They wanted to leave. They wanted to put this world behind them and never think of it again. But the humans were not finished. From the surface, missiles rose. Hundreds of them. They climbed through the atmosphere on towers of fire, moving toward the asterisk harvester asterisk with the slow determination of things that did not know they could not win. They were primitive. Slow. Barely able to reach the ship's altitude. But there were so many. And they carried nuclear warheads. "Shields up," an officer called. The missiles struck. Explosions blossomed against the shields, bright and terrible. The asterisk harvester asterisk shook, but the shields held. The missiles were harmless. They could not penetrate the defenses. They could not even slow the ship down. But Vex understood. The humans were not trying to destroy the ship. They knew they could not. They were trying to send a message. "Look at what we have. Look at what we are willing to use. We have more. We will keep coming. We will not stop." Vex looked at the display. More missiles were rising from the surface. Dozens more. Hundreds more. The humans had launched everything they had. They were showing the Xylos that they would rather burn their own world than let it be taken. "They are insane," an officer whispered. Vex did not answer. They were looking at the missiles, at the fire blooming against the shields, at the planet below that would not stop fighting. And they made a decision. "Open a channel to the surface," Vex said. The officer stared. "Commander." "Open a channel." For the first time in Xylos history, a commander of the Harvest Fleet requested communication with a primitive species. The channel opened. The screen flickered. And then a face appeared. General Marcus Cole. Old. Scarred. His uniform was plain, his hair gray. But his eyes were steady. They had seen war. They had seen loss. They had seen things that should have broken a person, and they had not broken. "You are leaving," Cole said. It was not a question. "We are," Vex said. The words felt strange. Heavy. We did not understand what we were dealing with. Cole nodded slowly. "No. You did not." Vex hesitated. They had never asked this question before. In 100 harvests, They had never needed to. But they needed to know now. They needed to understand what had happened here. What are you? Vex asked. Your technology is primitive. Your weapons are crude. You have not even left your own world. And yet you stopped us. How? Cole was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. There was no pride in it. No anger. Just truth. We have been fighting each other for 10,000 years. We have invented every possible way to kill. And we have survived every single one. You came to our world with your technology and your ships and your empire. But you do not understand. We are not a species that can be harvested. We are a species that fights. And we do not stop. Ever. Vex looked at the human. At the scars. At the eyes. At the cam of a man who had looked into the darkness and found it wanting. And Vex understood. The humans were not primitive. They were not weak. They were not prey. They were something the Xylos had never seen before. A species that had been forged in fire, shaped by war, hardened by survival. A species that would not break because breaking was not in them. Vex closed the channel. They turned to the communications officer. Record a transmission. For the Empire. The officer nodded. Vex spoke into the recorder. Their voice was steady, but there was something new in it. Something that had never been there before. Fear. To the Xylos Empire. Abort all missions to this sector. The species on the third planet is not primitive. It is not weak. It is not prey. We made a mistake. We made a huge mistake. The humans, they are not like anything we have encountered. They fight. They do not stop. They do not surrender. They do not break. Abort mission. Do not come here. Do not try to harvest this world. Leave it alone. This is Commander Vex of the Asterisk Harvester of Worlds Star. Transmission ends. The transmission was sent. The Asterisk Harvester Asterisk continued its retreat, moving away from the blue planet, away from the humans, away from the place where the Xylos Empire had learned its greatest lesson. Behind them, Earth grew smaller. A blue dot. A speck. A world that should have been easy. A world that had cost them everything. The Harvester of Worlds left Earth orbit. The ship was intact. Its hull was not damaged. Its systems were functional. But it carried something new. Something the Xylos had never carried before. Defeat. Not military defeat. The humans had not destroyed the ship. They had not needed to. They had defeated the Xylos in the only way that mattered. They had made them leave. The transmission traveled ahead of the ship, reaching the Xylos Empire within days. It was analyzed and debated. Some commanders dismissed it as the fear of a weak officer. Others read it and felt a cold weight settle in their chests. But the message was clear. There was a world at the edge of the galaxy that was not to be touched. A world called Earth. In the years that followed, other empires heard the story. It spread through the void like ripples in water. A primitive world that had stopped the Xylos' harvest. A species that had fought back with nets and missiles and a stubborn refusal to die. The story grew. It was embellished. Changed. Added to. But the core remained. The humans did not break. The humans did not bow. The humans fought. On Earth, life went on. The cities rebuilt. The forests grew back. The scars of the invasion faded. But the memory did not. The humans did not celebrate their victory. They did not build monuments. They simply remembered. They remembered the day the ship came. The day they stood up and said no. General Marcus Cole retired to a small house by the ocean. It was a quiet place, far from the cities, far from the noise. He did not give interviews. He did not write books. He sat on his porch and watched the waves and thought about the things he had seen. The wars. The losses. The survival. He was old now. Tired. But his eyes were still steady. One evening, a young reporter found him. She had traveled a long way, driven by a story she had heard as a child. She stood on the porch and asked him if he would speak with her. Cole looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. They sat on the porch and watched the sun set over the water. The reporter asked him about the day the aliens came. What did he feel? What did he think? Cole was silent for a long time. The waves crashed against the shore. The sky turned orange and red. I felt tired, he said finally. His voice was soft, worn smooth by years. I have been fighting my whole life. Wars. Losses. Things I cannot forget. I thought maybe, before I died, I would see peace. A quiet world. A quiet life. He looked at the ocean. But when that ship came, I knew. There is no peace for us. There is only the next fight. And the one after that. We fight, and we survive, and then we fight again. That is what we are. The reporter was quiet. She waited. But that is not a weakness, Cole said. It is what we are. We survive. We always survive. The reporter asked him what he would say to the aliens if he could. If he could send a message to the Xylos Empire, to Commander Vex, to anyone who might think of coming to Earth. Cole smiled. It was a tired smile. Old. Worn. But there was something in it. Something that had not died. I would tell them they made a mistake, he said. Not because we are strong. Not because we are smart. Because we are stubborn. We have been fighting since we crawled out of the mud. We have been fighting since we lived in caves and threw rocks at each other. We will be fighting long after we reach the stars. And anyone who comes to our world looking for an easy harvest will learn what every empire in our history has learned. He looked at the reporter. His eyes were steady. We do not break. We do not bow. We fight. And we do not stop. The Xylos Empire never returned to Earth. The transmission became a warning passed from commander to commander, a story told to young officers before their first harvest. The humans, they would say. Do not go to the humans. Leave that world alone. It is not worth the cost. Somewhere in the void between stars, Commander Vex carried the memory of a blue planet, a primitive world, a species that had taught the great Xylos Empire a lesson it would never forget. Some species can be harvested, some species can be conquered, and some species, the ones who have been fighting since before they learned to walk, are not worth the cost. On Earth, the sun set over the ocean. The waves crashed against the shore. The young reporter left, carrying the old general's words with her. Cole sat on his porch and watched the stars appear, one by one, in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, the Xylos were telling their own stories. Somewhere out there, other empires were learning the same lesson. And somewhere out there, the humans waited. Not because they wanted to fight, but because they had learned, a long time ago, that the only way to survive was to be ready. To be stubborn. To be the species that did not break. The stars came out. The waves kept crashing. And on a small porch by the ocean, an old soldier sat and watched and remembered. The humans, the stubborn, fighting, surviving humans, lived on. Waiting. Watching. Ready for whatever came next.